I
Hi.
love that hi. I love that when you call into Skype, it plays you like a little song.
Oh my god, I like actually want to choreograph a dance to the Skype jingle.
It's got a nice little beat to
Yeah,
it.
totally. It's like there's nothing like it these days because your phone is just on silent. So Ashley Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. You've been a part of Dance Device Lab since its inception, and you are an integral part to this. Tell us where you grew up and sort of your path and your journey and how you became to be doing what you're doing.
All right. So I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I actually started dancing through a program in my middle school. It was an arts, not really an art school, but a gifted and talented magnet program, and they had a dance company. And I guess it was my seventh grade. You could only be in seventh or eighth grade to be in the dance company.
Okay.
Mind you, I had never taken a dance class before in my life.
What made you sign up?
Well, for whatever reason, there was a lot of boys in the dance company. I was like, okay, I've never seen this. This is kind of cool. So I went to the dance show, basically the talent show, and the boys did like a dance, and they were all doing toe touches.
Of course.
And I was like, yeah, that was like
that's like the first move you learn as a male dancer is a toe touch.
Oh, completely.
They're just like, go do it.
It's in like every solo
exactly.
from like 10 to maybe even 18.
Yeah.
And they were doing toe touches, and I was like, I can do that. So then at the end of the year, they had the auditions, and keep in mind, I've never danced. I showed up at the audition. Apparently, I did something, and I got into the dance company.
I love that. Did you do a toe touch? Did you have to do it?
Yeah, who knows what it looked like. It was probably quite scary. So that was the start. And then through that program, I met some girls that went to a private studio. And every year they're like, gotta come to our studio, you'll love it. Blah, blah. I was like, no, because I was also playing soccer and sports at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm going to keep playing soccer. I wasn't sold on dance yet. And then finally, 8th grade came around, and I was like, all right, I'll go, I'll come take class. And that was kind of the beginning. And that's the studio. It's called TK Company now. So that was the studio I trained at from 8th grade through high school. And that was your traditional small competitive studio. We had our jazz number, our lyrical number, and we would go to competitions like a couple times a year. And then we started venturing into the convention world. So that's when I got my first taste of what New York City Dance Alliance was. And that was a big part of our studio at the time, was the Dance Alliance organization. And so every summer we would go to nationals and compete. And yeah, we were comp kids. I grew up as a comp kid.
Yeah, totally. Working with many guest teachers. Were guest teachers coming into your studio, or were you mostly going out to conventions?
You know, that's actually one of the things that I loved about the studio was that we were kind of in our area. We were the first to start to bring in guests. I remember very early, Jason Parsons came in and he would do, it was always like a big deal when Jason was coming. Like you prepared for that.
Totally.
And he would come in, he would teach a couple of master classes, and then, of course, he would work with, like, the top girls. I don't think it was until probably maybe even my senior year in high school that I got into a Jason Parsons number.
But you did.
It happened. It happened. Which is so funny because now Jason is, like, a dear friend, mentor, teacher, and a lot of the way I look at my work and my approach to work comes from him. He's been a huge influence.
He had such a huge influence on me too. And I didn't realize it until much later. You know, he never came to our studio, but through the big conventions and stuff, you know how like they pick out dancers, you know, like 5 people to do the combo at the end. I would never get like never, which is like not me. I was a very late bloomer, but he for like 2 or 3 years in a row, he picked me. And I just was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, what else? You know, you do the combo. And then it's like, swear to God, I was like, 29. And I'm like, just thinking when I run into him and I look back and I'm just like, wait a minute. I was always a little different. Like having this career in concert dance now, but it was like, I didn't know what that was back then. But for some reason, his movement style and what he was introducing to me, like, fit and was interesting in ways that I didn't even know existed, and I didn't even connect it until like decades later. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe, okay, that was like in there somewhere.
Because I feel like at that time in the competition convention scene, no one was doing what he was doing.
Right.
And I think dancers like us gravitated very much to that. And look at where we are now. Look at what we do now. It's funny how those like little things when you're a kid like really like make a difference when you're older.
So what happened after high school?
So after high school, I decided I did want to go to college for dance, so I applied to 2 schools. I applied to the North Carolina School of the Arts and California Institute of the Arts, and I ended up being a North Carolinian. I chose to go to the North Carolina School of the Arts. Mm-hmm. And that's when things really changed. Having come from like a competition competitive environment, I was exposed to a whole other world of dance that I knew absolutely nothing about. I mean, what was great about the university was you were there with kids that were ballet majors, and they were on that track to be in ballet companies. And then you also had kids that were on that track to become contemporary dancers.
Did you take like classical modern there? Was that when you were first introduced to that sort of like the Limón technique, which we'll get to? But
yes, so that was the first time I experienced what a true modern dance class was. Yeah. So I remember freshman year we did a lot of grand-based work, and then a huge element of the curriculum at the North Carolina School of the Arts is Cunningham. So we did a lot of
Oh my God, that's cool.
And that for me was like a game changer.
Yeah.
You become so aware of like the tiny little pieces and the details and the control and how to stabilize, but how to also be completely off, and then how do you find that again. So we did a lot of Cunningham, and then Limón was also the other big piece. So yeah, that's when I got my first taste of the Limón technique.
And then you became a company member, and I think this is something to talk about because, you know, I had a similar thing. I didn't have modern at my studio, and that is one of the biggest missions of Dance Device Lab is to sort of introduce these elements for people. So for people like us, we didn't even know that existed, you know, per our earlier conversations. And, you know, it took until college to just, you know, even dive in. And that's okay. Like, it is okay that there's no modern in, you know, across the country there. It's, you know, that's just what and who is around. And it's often seen at a higher level of education. You know, it is sort of the bedrock of college dance programs. But being able to just introduce it and be like, this is a thing, you know, like if we come just like, here's a Cunningham warm up, like who knew? Let's just try it, you know. And I think that's
what's great about Dance Device Labs is that you are introducing it to the students at an earlier age than what we got it.
Yeah.
Because I know most universities understand that 90% of these kids have not been exposed to that. So they're not looking necessarily for a modern dance diva. They want to see, are you able to take this information and what can we build on from there?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this at Juilliard, but they're there to mold you. I always felt like when I got to college, I don't want to say break you down, but they strip away some bad habits and then get you what you are, and then that's when you really become a dancer.
I like to reflect on my college experience of they honed my individuality. You know, like they created you instead of like, you know, you work as a young person to train, and then it's like, let's figure out what we can do with that, you know. So then,
and I think those are the most successful dancers.
Yeah.
The ones that figure out how am I different and how am I able to mold into these various dance situations that you're going to find yourself in.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've worked commercially, you've worked concert, you've done musical theater, like.
Well, that is so funny because I was just about to say that about you. I was going to say one of the most interesting things of, you know, we've worked together in a lot of capacities. Educators, we've danced for each other. You know, I've been in music videos you've choreographed. I've been in like concert dance pieces you've choreographed. And can you sort of talk to me about your creative process when you're in sort of more of a commercial dance setting and when you're in more of like an Ashley Lindsay dance contemporary is that the same? Is it different? Do you approach it differently?
I feel like I have 3 choreography heads. If I'm working on a concert, let's start with commercial. If I'm working on a commercial project, it's quick. We don't have a lot of time. I personally use a lot of choreographic tools to take something very simple and how do you elevate it? Because you're not necessarily performing, let's say film, for example. You're not performing to a live audience. You're playing to the camera. So you have to think, what is visually creative and what is going to not overshadow the overall vision. It's really about complementing what's there.
Yeah.
Concert choreographer, actually, let's say, is my favorite, because that's when I really get to like dive in and be creative and explore and play. I know for me, like let's say I'm working on a concert project, I'm going to call in or try to use dancers that inspire me, because it's not necessarily about how I move, it's about how are you able to bring something to what I'm doing.
That's really interesting.
And I also think I see that in my teaching as well, because it really has to be about the student, because I know the information and I'm still learning information, but it's about me giving it to you.
Absolutely.
And then competition choreographer is a combination of the two. You want that competition work to be creative, and the caliber of work that we see now is very much that. But I would say 90% of the time you're running under very strict time constraints.
Yeah.
Either that being your rehearsal process, or you have to say something and you have to say something strong and clear in 3 minutes.
We touched on this earlier, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Sort of the idea of the concert dance world infiltrating the sort of competitive world. Like you mentioned, when we were growing up, the most contemporary was starting to show an influence, but the most contemporary thing really was like a lyrical dance. There was people were not dancing barefoot, people were not doing the things that they're doing today, and I sort of think that this is because of the internet. Like you can Google things and you can know who Ohad is, and you can take these inspirations, or many different choreographers, Crystal Pite or blah blah blah. And I wonder your thoughts on sort of that transition of how the sort of like European concert world has infiltrated the competitive world. It's sort of pros, it's cons, and how you see that affecting dancers and training.
I think it's really refreshing to see that when it's done with integrity and it's done with an understanding of where the work comes from.
Yeah.
Because if you really look at concert work, it really comes from various dance techniques that then people have made their own and allowed themselves to dig deep and explore to create this vocabulary.
Right.
I mean, I've seen work on a competitive stage that would blow you away. And I'm sure you've seen it as well. And it's so inspiring, because I wasn't doing that when I was a kid. And to see kids now doing that, I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
I had problems when I do think the internet is a wonderful tool and it's amazing, but I think when you're watching and viewing dance, you should use it as a source of inspiration, not a source for steps.
Right. Totally.
I've seen things on a competitive stage where I could open YouTube and see that same phrase.
No, completely. And that's I really sort of, to go off like the mission that we were talking about of introducing it I love to introduce it, but like you mentioned, like I love to introduce the background for it. I've literally seen someone like recreate Ohad's -16 at a dance competition, and maybe people don't know what that is.
It's your heart to like.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's like, I know what that is. But like you mentioned, it's like there's an entire technique called Gaga that may sound goo goo gaga to you, but there is a dance technique that was developed over years that goes into that choreography. So I think go.
No. With that being said, it's like knowing where the work comes from, because we're seeing this very like creature-esque movement quality coming out of people, and a lot of times it feels very contrived.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to Gaga, a lot of that information comes from the tools within that technique. So it's like, to do the work, study the technique.
Absolutely. You had an amazing career. You performed in the Lamone Company. You freelanced with Lara Lubavitch. You did many commercial projects. And now you are the director of the North Carolina School of the Arts Summer Dance Intensive, which is pretty full circle.
It really is.
It is. So I wonder if you could talk about, now that you're not dancing so much, how do you keep a creative practice? What continues to inspire you? And could you tell us a little bit about the program and your missions and what you are doing with that?
Yeah, our program is rooted in classical ballet and contemporary. So we offer a 4-week program where all the students take us to our ballet class every morning for 5 weeks, Monday through Friday, and
that'll whip you in the shade.
Won't it? Yeah. They have point classes, repertory work. They learn various variations throughout the program. And then our contemporary students are exposed to composition, which, looking back on it, composition was probably the tool I learned from college that I did not know that I needed so much. And that the tool that has served me way past learning any dance stuff.
Yeah.
We used to have a course, it was the week before we would leave for spring break, and every day the seniors would get a piece of music and a choreographic task and 8 dancers, and you had 45 minutes to create something. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was the best project ever, because that is literally choreographic competition.
Wow.
Because there's so many times I walk into a studio space with 15 dancers I've never met before.
Right.
And someone has paid money for me to be there, right. And I have to create something. And I refer back to those tools from those assignments all the time.
What are some of the tools or tasks that you you pull from to make that happen so fast?
I think for me, what I found to be very successful, and I've been doing this more and more over the years, I come in with, let's say I'm creating an instrumental piece of music, where the meter isn't a definite 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So I create phrases, and then I create 2 to 3 phrases. I create a phrase that's going to take me to the floor, it's going to give me some levels, I'm going to create a phrase that's going to travel, and I'm going to create something that can ultimately become a unison. So now I have a bank of movement. Every kid knows every phrase. So now at this point, we're 3-4 hours into rehearsal. I can say, you 5, I want you to pick up the phrase from here. And then creative things just start to naturally happen when you layer movement.
Do you have any recommendations of books or dances that you've seen that, we could share that inspire you? Oh, you did? Oh my gosh, you came prepared.
Well, I was actually thinking back to one of the first concert pieces I ever saw that I was like, what is this? Yeah. I remember I was in my dorm in North Carolina, and someone had a VHS tape of Ron Brown's Grace. First of all, I had no idea who Ron Brown was.
Yeah.
And they popped it in, and I was like, it was so funny because we were like sharing videos. I'm like, this is my solo from National.
Yeah, of course.
Years ago.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
And then someone whips out this like Ron Brown VHS, and I was like,
you're like, this is how long?
I mean, this is like, exactly. And I just remember being so inspired by seeing the structure of the work, and also it was like this mix, and it's so funny because we see this all the time now. It was this mix of like hip hop, house, meets modern dance.
Yeah.
How familiar, and like that is like kind of it.
Totally.
So definitely Ron Brown's Grace. So I recently saw The Statement by Crystal Pipe, and it absolutely blew my mind.
It's so
I just saw it on my laptop and I watched it from top to bottom. It was absolutely incredible.
It's really incredible. It's so exciting.
It's just to see that it was like the physicality of the movement, yes, that's incredible, but seeing it blended with almost like a dance theater tone.
Yes. Yeah.
The marriage, it was right, because it could also not be right.
Completely.
But everything about it was so right.
And it's such a contained dance, but it feels so so big and important, and it's crazy.
As I was watching it, I was wondering, I was like, okay, are we going to be around this? So the piece centers around a big conference table. And I was wondering, are we going to be around this table the entire time?
Yeah.
And if we leave it, how are we going to leave it?
Mm-hmm.
And the way she chose to leave it was absolutely brilliant.
So great.
Also, the older I get, the more I notice the lighting design.
Mm-hmm.
For so long, it's like, okay, lights, we need lights, but that is truly a crucial element
Absolutely.
to the work. Anything. Like, you look at the Super Bowl, like, it would not be that without lights.
For sure.
And then even concert work, like, it just elevated the piece so much.
So good.
And then, just a favorite piece of that I performed would be Jose Limon's The Traitor. It's a piece for 8 men. It's the story of Jesus and Judas in this abstracted narrative way. An abstract narrative can be a thing.
Cool.
Yeah, that was one of the last pieces that I performed when I was in the company. And to feel that energy of men on stage and telling the story, and a piece that was choreographed in the 50s, and seeing it on Bodies at that time would have been like 2007, like, hands down, one of my favorite pieces. Probably dances today.
Cool. Well, I'm going to put the links to these pieces in our comments below so people can have easy access to go take a look.
Excellent. Well, then in that case, I have one last one.
Okay.
It's Kyle Abraham's Runaway.
Oh, so good.
Seeing that live on New York City Ballet, first of all, seeing New York City Ballet do anything, you're just like, that's ballet. Was so amazing because he was able to flip City Ballet on its head while still remaining true to their legacy, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant.
No,
he did
just like
an incredible job
playing Kanye at the Coke Theater, just like that stuff is like, it's so important. So like, it's just like cross-pollinates these worlds like immediately.
It has to. That's how dance is going to stay alive for like the next generation,
Totally.
So those are some of my favorites. I mean, I can keep going.
You're such a joy, and you're so talented, and I'm so thankful you're a part of Dance Device Lab, and I hope...
Thank you for having me, and I thoroughly enjoyed working for this program. You're doing something right that the dance community has needed for a while, and I'm glad to be involved.
Thanks, Ashley. So
You're so welcome.
Well, to be continued.
Yes.
Bye.